I would be down to talk about that because I found the story and I was thinking of reading it for a future episode. But I'm down to talk anything right this moment. Don't have a specific episode idea laid out right now. I'm listening to Dracula.
Oh.
I'm an hour into Dracula. I got 18 more hours to listen.
Oh.
It's a long novel.
Yeah, it took me about 3.5 shifts while working at a cleaning company.
So listen to Dracula?
Yes, I will not name the cleaning company due to I do not feel like advertising them.
Yeah.
Their policies are BS, but either which way, it took me about 3 shifts to listen to that, and it was good.
I enjoy what I've heard so far.
Great storytelling. I'm sorry, I'm too drunk to quite remember. I have the book too, but I'm not willing to crack open the book because the pages are yellowed, and it's one from, I think, the 60s, 70s.
I decided to take a break from physical books just for now to try to get in the hang of audiobooks because I want to get a nice pair of headphones and like go on walks and listen to books and stuff.
If you like wireless, I prefer the JBL.
Okay.
But not advertising here. It's just I really like their bass quality personally.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, because I would have only my right headphone in constantly, that went out before my left one did. It still works. It's just not as loud.
What I want to do is get hearing aids that are Bluetooth capable.
Costco.
And I'm
They're
thinking
$1,000 at Costco.
I'm thinking of what I need to do is just go to an audiologist because Costco's got decent prices but not the best quality, and I've been spoiled since the age of 4 with super high quality expensive hearing aids.
They have 4 different brands.
Yeah.
All Bluetooth, ranging from $500 to $2,000.
True. The baseline price of the bargain price that I get for high quality hearing aids that go beyond Costco is $3,000, and to add Bluetooth capabilities is probably another $600. And
again, though, Costco $1,000 for a Bluetooth capable, $500 for a Bluetooth capable. I'd be personally, I don't have hearing difficulties. I have auto processing difficulties, but if I had hearing difficulties, I'd go for the cheapest first, especially there, and then see.
From experience, the cheapest are really shitty. It'll give you headaches. Because you're hearing like frequencies that are basically not good for the brain to hear at 12 hours at a time. In fact, even the high quality hearing aids you're only supposed to have in like 10 hours a day.
Really?
The cheaper you get, you're talking about more migraines, more psychological distress.
And with your own, may I say it?
Mm-hmm.
With your schizophrenia, that could be way fucking worse, couldn't it?
Well, there's some theories out there about deafness and it overlapping symptoms with schizophrenia.
All I can think of is a schizophrenic that's that's deaf and never had a hearing aid, seeing signs instead of voices.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me laugh only because it's evidence on how our brains process languages in general.
Yeah.
I honestly wonder how that would be for somebody who speaks a different language or knows multiple languages that is schizophrenic. What would their schizophrenia process for their main language?
Well, it kind of reminds me, to tie things back to Dracula, it reminds me of there's an old 1880s painting of a pair of gloves doing this, and it's just hands folded, sitting at a resting position. No body is attached, and it's a vampire nude with gloves in front of a mirror. And so
that sounds familiar.
Yeah, you've probably seen it on Facebook.
I don't use Facebook as much. To be honest, I just don't like the atmosphere.
Or on any like mean thing, and it's kind of it's funny because that's the image that I go to in my head when I think of schizophrenics, deaf schizophrenics hallucinating signing hands instead of spoken voices, because really what it is the brain saying there's someone there talking, whether they're signing or talking. And maybe hallucinations come from a survival thing where we had to be a little extra alert at times in our history, like threats to our survival required us to be on that level of alert. And in order to survive, the people that were on that level of alert were a little more alert than they should have been.
That just makes my drunk brain, for some reason, skip to the uncanny valley.
Oh, yeah.
The theory of why we have that. The theory that we have the idea, the theory of uncanny valley, things that look human that aren't human. Why do we have that? Is there possibly something in our past that looked human but wasn't human?
Yeah, those other species of Homo sapiens that coexisted with us.
Yes, Neanderthals and Homo sapiens existed at the exact same time, and there's still I remember there's a 0.03% of the human population had Neanderthal DNA.
For at least 30,000 years, there was 3 species of intelligent apes coexisting.
I don't have my phone to look up what those were, and I'd love to know what those were.
Australopithecus, Pithecanthropus.
Oh!
So those are examples of earlier Homo sapiens species that coexisted with some of their cousins and brothers or whatever on the genealogy scale. And and I'm talking about broad genealogy.
Yes.
They had common ancestors, but I do know that there's a theory where we feared human-like images and things that aren't human. Like the face of an owl that looks almost human. And
that has never really scared me, though. It's interested me. Yes, Greg? Sorry.
The thing with the uncanny valley, the reason it creeps us out so much is because it's something that our brain can't recognize. So it instantly becomes afraid of it because it's something we haven't experienced in our lives. So as soon as we see something in that uncanny valley, all of our danger signals go off because it's something we've never seen before, so we don't know if it's dangerous, if it's okay, or what's going on.
But as children, we don't have that. We don't have that fear of the unknown. Why do we have it as adults?
When I was a child, I definitely had a fear of the unknown.
Really?
The dark scared me a lot.
No.
I overcame it, but as a child, being in the dark, I would see a shadow of a man in the dark, and it could just be a pile of laundry in a chair or something. But just you see something that is uncannily resembling a thing, or you imagine it, and you imagine that there's something in the dark with you. And
I was never I was not scared of the dark or anything in it. I was actually curious until I had a traumatic event. I have an older brother who's 6 years older than I am, and he loved scaring the crap out of me.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, we finally got beds that weren't, the box spring on the floor. They had I forget what the thing is called.
The box spring?
The thing the box spring goes on.
The frame?
Frame, thank you. My grandmother finally got us a frame for mine and my sister's beds, and my older brother decided that he would turn out the lights and playtime before bed and scare the fuck out of my sister and I by grabbing our ankles and pulling us from the bed to the floor. I was never scared of it before then, and I saw Tommy at 2 years old. Never scared of dolls until that day. I was never scared of the dark. I was always interested. I was a kid. I grew up on a large produce farm, and I absolutely loved going out in the middle of the night. I was not scared of coming across any coyotes or any of the cougars that were out there, because I was taught where to hit them and to run the fuck away. Or to play dead, because if you play dead, most of the time they're not going to eat you because you're already rotting. Coyotes would. Cougars, for some reason, don't seem to be as opportunistic scavengers, out here at least. I don't really get why.
Urbanization, maybe.
Maybe, but this was back in the late 90s, early 2000s, so...
Well, even then it was quite a bit of logging and shit going on.
The farm was right off of a national park, so people weren't allowed to log, people weren't allowed to hunt, they weren't allowed to do anything in that area.
It might have been something affecting their population at the time.
Maybe. I know that one of our neighbors had started putting in llamas because the cougars weren't attacking people anymore, but they were still attacking livestock.
Did you know donkeys are good at... We can do research, but I feel like wild speculation makes for more entertaining conversation. Because we say some wild things in our conversations that are wildly untrue sometimes. And I'll look it up later and I'll be like, oh, this is kind of a fun science to compare what we think to and believe to what is actually true. Because we all have beliefs or thoughts that aren't true. Anyone that thinks that they're never wrong,
those people scare me.
Oh yeah, they're arrogant, and you don't want to be around them or have a conversation with them either. Research is good to do before recording, but while recording, it's just like you're listening to people research rather than recount their ideas.
Well, we
and
have
ideas are a little. When you were a kid, before you reach the age of reason, what are some things that freaked you out or scared you?
To be honest, I don't have a lot of memories as a kid. The biggest thing that scared me was always going to sleep and being like half awake and seeing shit that wasn't there and being like half in a nightmare but still realizing you're awake and trying to get out of it. That always scared me. And I've always been super averse to any sort of pain, so I've always been super careful. So I guess like a really painful death has always really scared me, or something that involves.
So you've never been scared of anything illogical or irrational?
No, never been like scared of clowns or
spiders.
No, even heights. I'm not that scared of heights.
You never thought of the boogeyman as a kid?
No.
Things under the bed?
No. I've always thought really logically, and my parents always said they never had anything like that happen to them, and everyone I talked to, no one ever actually had anything like that happen to them, so I just figured it's kind of like Santa Claus or whatever. It's not actually real, just like a story mechanic. And I know there are people that have claimed to have supernatural experiences, but I believe that's probably most likely a trick of the brain rather than something actually supernatural.
I don't think everyone who shared an experience like that believes it was real or supernatural and real at the same time. I think most people agree that when you're a kid, you do have a more open mind and you tend to like, your imagination will run wild. and make you scared of things that are silly, like the boogeyman, or even as an adult or a teenager, the Slender Man, and, you know, stuff like that. Bigfoot, just sort of a monster of some kind in the dark, whether it be the woods or inside a house. But I don't think people believe that it's real. I think most people will, at the end of the day, shrug it off and be like, yeah, you're right. Logically, it can't be there. We haven't been able to prove it. We've proven the existence of subatomic particles. We can see them, but we can't see Bigfoot. And so, logically, I think most people would agree that Bigfoot doesn't exist, or the boogeyman doesn't exist, or ghosts don't exist. But some people still have experiences and will recount them to you as if they were real, just to tell their story the right way, and then have that secondary thought later, it's like, yeah, well, it's probably just a trick of the brain, but that's the way I experienced it. I think religion and spirituality comes from the same place as Bigfoot and ghosts and boogeymen. The imagination running wild in the brain.
Yeah. You see, I believe that religion and spirituality come from a place of trying to understand our universe, not our brain.
I'm saying supernatural.
Still.
Well, the idea of ghosts, like the Holy Ghost, or even bringing people back from the dead, or angels and demons, things that aren't tied to philosophy, because religion has a lot of philosophy, and it does try to grasp an understanding of life and death and reality. But I don't think that, like, I think the other stuff in religion, like, you know, a boat big enough to hold all species, you know, preserving everything we have on the boat, and little fairy tales like that. Like, that's the imagination running wild while we're trying to grasp, like, an understanding.
But the boat, what if it was an island in the middle of all that shit? What if it's due to stories that we've had, that our ancestors since the Ice Age have passed down and just been bastardized, modernized, and...
Well, that's the problem with an oral tradition or oral recountings of history, is if you've ever played the telephone game, you know that eventually someone's going to fuck it up, and then the rest of the people beyond have a different version than the actual original version.
Telephone game.
You don't know the telephone game?
No, I was not socialized as a kid, so I don't know what that is.
It's basically you say a sentence to someone in their ear, and then they have to interpret that sentence and give the same idea across to the next person, and no one hears what's going on.
You sit in a circle and it goes back to the original person.
Yeah.
Oh.
And you see how much it changed between people, because you're not allowed to say the same exact thing
Out loud.
that the person said to you.
You're not allowed to. What?
You're supposed to only whisper it into the next person's ear.
Yeah.
So it never gets clarified to the whole group what the original sentence is.
Yeah.
And the sentence gets changed because of mishearings and retellings.
Oh.
And you always end up with something different than the original sentence. Even though language is great at conveying an idea, but having to reconvey that idea with different words causes changes to happen and misconceptions. Someone might interpret it differently and then reword it in a way that's different from the original message.
You can see that in lots of things, like science and the public consensus of what is factual and not factual. It's like, well, he said this, like when I was a baby, like I was like 3 or 4, I was like really young and I was in a daycare. And another child told me, Bill Clinton wants to kill babies. And that was the fact presented to me as a child. And I was scared of Bill Clinton for 3 days. And, but the fact is he supported women's choice in the process of abortion. Which is completely different than killing babies, in my opinion.
Yes, I have a huge opinion on that.
But
so.
The telephone game, the listener changed the facts to the next listener, and then the kid got told something. That's propaganda, and you know, the fact that one of the listeners was a young child that was impressionable, probably by some old fart telling them that Bill Clinton wants to kill babies. But another example of that is Hollywood gossip, or gossip in general. Shirley Jackson's The Possibility of Evil explores that telephone game in a very minute part of it, that short story. It's about an old woman that spreads gossip by sending anonymous letters to people, and it's usually false stuff based off of a few facts, and it ruins people's lives. She has a hobby of ruining people's lives, and her other hobby is a rose garden, and at the end of the story she gets caught in sending a letter out, and someone destroys her rose garden as a revenge, you know.
Ooh.
But The Possibility of Evil, the title is about this seemingly quaint, nice old lady who every now and then writes something on a piece of paper and sends it to the right address to ruin the right person's life, because she's an old nosy woman that gets into people's lives and gossips. But gossip itself tends to be in real life from the telephone game. It's like, oh, he said this, or she did this, or he did this, and you know, they did this to somebody else behind their back. And it's usually more nuanced, complex, you know, the real facts. I noticed that like Facebook articles and memes are prone to the telephone game. Ideas of science, like Galileo got murdered because he believed the earth went around the sun. It's like, no, he was put under house arrest, but he died of old age, you know. And it wasn't just heliotropic stuff, it was more like you know, he had a whole book that got banned by the church, or a whole treatise on that subject with a lot of other facts thrown in there about, you know, the revolutions around the sun and how the sun works and the galaxies and stuff he was able to observe. But over time we believed that we all thought that the world was flat 200 years ago. That's not true. We always knew it was round, but because of the telephone game, people have these myths, false ideas of reality. Yeah, Hansel and Gretel, which for that was the first episode. I was thinking that, I posted it. It was very casual and it wasn't super in depth, and I did say we would come back to it. But the general idea was being scared of the woods or the wilderness. And today I had like this. Sorry, what'd you say?
I don't understand that.
Well,
during the day.
In the modern age, it's harder to understand because the woods have been decimated of game that, or not game, but like animals that, or really any kind of threat to us other than being without a cell phone signal and so far away from civilization that we'd be fucked. But
I don't believe that, because even out here we've had cougars.
We have, but compare it to the amount of cougars that existed in the 1790s.
Yes, but I still think I do not fear people. I do not fear the dark. I fear what is in the dark that is not human. I fear other predators.
Yeah.
I don't look at my cats in the dark. I don't see their eyes and go, "Oh, friend." I see their eyes and go, "Oh shit. Right, I have a cat."
So it's when someone says the woods and wilderness as a subject of fear, they generally mean what you were saying. They're just putting it under that subject line because that's where our ancestors, for most of human history, encountered threats. It's when they left the city and went into the wilderness. Because there's nobody to save you, nobody to hear your screams. It's kind of like space. The final frontier, we compare space to taking over all land, but like if we went up into these woods, our biggest threat would probably be a human. Or
I'd still actually be scared.
Yeah, well, at night.
Oh, absolutely. During the day.
Do you remember that one time we thought we heard a human voice and we think it was an owl or something?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right out here. Yes.
We were by that fence, and Grant had just left, and we were still smoking, and we were talking about spooky stuff, which probably made us a little bit more sensitive to spooky stuff, which I've noticed a lot when you're out camping with people and you're telling scary stories that you might scare yourself.
Yeah. Are you recording? Or are you done?
I did hit record.
Okay.
But I want y'all to listen to it before I post. One thing that I was thinking about today is, well, y'all are parents, so would you let Orchid play in the woods by herself?
Of course not.
Of course not. But when you were a kid, you have memories of doing that, right? Like playing in the woods
Yes.
without parental supervision.
Well, I grew up out on a farm in the middle of the nowhere, so it wasn't a big deal of people.
Yeah. I was in the woods, but I was also close enough to civilization that it, like, through a modern lens, I was probably at a risk of getting abducted or becoming a victim of some sort of violent or sexual crimes. But like, going into the woods is part of what makes us animals, having that connection with nature. So I think there's a good side to it, and there always has been.
Oh yeah.
But historically, our fairy tales are like, stay away from the woods, that's where the witches and the fairy doors, where you walk through the door frame.
That's what those are called?
I don't know. I just remember you talking about fairy doors.
I don't know if they're called fairy doors. I don't know what they are called, but...
Portals?
Yeah, door in the middle of the woods. Don't walk through it, you'll disappear. Or staircase in the middle of the woods. Don't walk up it or XYZ will happen.
I think that's urban legend. Well, rural legend, I guess, technically, since it's about the woods. But I don't think that's an official category, rural legends. They just call those folk tales.
Yeah.
Or old wives' tales.
Oh my god, I have a book.
Farmers' wives' tales.
I have a book of folk tales from like Mount Hood area, government camp, from all the way to...
Ooh, I'd like to borrow that.
It's Ghost Stories of Oregon.
Okay.
I have the Oregon Vortex in there, which is like 3 paragraphs. It basically says nothing about the Oregon Vortex.
The less they say about it, the creepier I think it tends to be.
I know. I also have Ghost Stories of California and I think I have Ghost Stories of Virginia. I have ghost stories from almost every state I've been to.
Same. Except for like specific locales. I got New England. I got Western American tales, but they're sort of spread out, and there's not. I don't think there's a single Oregon or Washington tale in that book.
I have ghost stories of Washington as well.
Okay.
Ghost stories of California, ghost stories of Oregon, and ghost stories of the United States. I got these all while going to horror haunted attractions.
Yeah.
I've been to the Oregon Vortex. I've gotten to go to a couple plantations in West Virginia and Virginia, North Carolina as well. I also got to go to the Winchester Mansion in California. I loved going there, actually.
The South has a lot of places like that.
Don't even get me. Do you mind if I get started on going to the fucking plantations?
Yeah.
Those creeped me out. The tour guide we had was so nice, bubbly. In fact, I mean, he was fantastic. He was funny. He was morbid as well, but had a great fucking ability to bring you in and joke about the morbidity as well.
He had a great comical sense with the macabre, that sort of dark humor.
And he was in his 70s.
But it was it was tactful. It wasn't like
he
South
was in his
Park
70s. He was older.
Aww.
And he just, the way he talked about some of the areas at the plantation were directly secondhand stories from his grandparents type shit. And that was to me, that was honestly the annoying part of it. Not the annoying as in, oh, he shouldn't have done that. Annoying as in, it annoyed me because it didn't feel right. Because that area, going to a few of those plantations just didn't feel right either.
The energy is off.
Yes, but when he was the only, him being the tour guide for some reason made it a slight bit better. But not as good. Because that was at the Jefferson plantation.
Okay. In Virginia?
Yep.
West Virginia or Virginia?
I don't remember which one, to be honest. I'm sorry.
But you're from West Virginia?
No, I'm from here in Oregon.
Oh, your family has ties
Nope.
to Virginia? You were just out there for no reason?
We were out there because foster care.
Oh,
My
okay.
foster mom's sister lives in North Carolina, so we went out to North Carolina. We ended up going through
One of the
Virginia, both of them.
Both of them, okay.
And we went to Washington, D.C. because we were going to the museums out in D.C.
It's such an odd place historically. Did you know the first job I ever had was a record store, and the building that record store was in, the basement was a morgue for the Civil War, and Tennessee, Nashville specifically, was one of the first places the Union invaded, because we're right below Kentucky, right? And once they gained control of Nashville, they were able to use the river systems to go outward. At least that's from what I remember. And highway systems for horse and buggies, travelers of all kinds of trains, and taking control of the railroad and any rivers. But it was a Civil War morgue. At least that's what all the people told me. I'll have to research it, but it's going to be hard now because that building's no longer a historic record store. It's now a dive bar. And that's really, if we're going to talk about things that are actually scary, think about all your favorite places being replaced by like a Kid Rock dive bar. It makes you sad. Like
no,
the library.
Yeah, I was about to say library, secondhand bookstores. No, thank you.
Yeah, we need less dive bars. We need more like coffee places that focus on books.